Injuries are the bane of a runner's existence. And unfortunately, I ended up dealing with an injury in my last marathon training block. And now that the training block is over, I've successfully completed the marathon and I'm still injury free. I figured it'd be the perfect time to talk about how I fixed my runner's knee. So the first thing I wanna make very clear, I am in no way, shape, or form a medical expert. If you are dealing with an injury from a sport such as running, please seek professional medical advice on how you should deal with your specific injury. I primarily wanted to make this video to, one, show you what mistakes I made that led to my injury, talk about the things I did to recover from that injury, and then what I'm continuously doing to ensure that I don't have that injury happen again. So before we can understand how I fixed my runner's knee injury, we first have to understand how I got injured in the first place. So if you look at my training prior to my marathon training block, I was doing an 8-week base training plan and it did not go well. I was all over the place. None of my mileage was consistent. I missed a ton of workouts and a ton of runs, which left me with little to no mileage leading up to a high mileage training plan. And then when I got into the actual 16-week marathon training plan, I went immediately into high mileage every single week with intense workouts because the Hanson's marathon method pretty much starts you out having workouts the first week into your training plan. And then I also was incorporating a lot of elevation into each of my weekly runs. And so by the second week of my training plan, I had started to get a small pain in my left knee, which just felt like maybe I was overdoing a little bit, but it was nothing to really be concerned about. And to be honest, most of the time when I have pains, I tend to ignore them unless they consistently stay there like this did for 2 weeks or more, which probably isn't the wisest thing to do. I should probably always assess, but that's hindsight, and hindsight is always 20/20. But either way, I started to feel a pain 2 weeks into my running, and by the 4th week of running, the pain had gotten to a point where I no longer could ignore it and I needed to do something about my knee pain. And so the day I decided to actually stop my running was the Monday of, I believe, my 5th week in the training plan. I had a workout scheduled for the day. It was a 12x400 workout at 10K pace. And I completed the entire workout to a T, which is why I actually kept running in the 2 weeks from when the knee injury first kind of appeared to when I actually stopped. Was it never actually affected my running. I was able to hit all of my paces. And once I was done running, the knee pain would pretty much go away to some extent. There was no pain when there was pressure on the knee. And other than when I was actually in motion running, I never really felt any pain. And like I said, when I did run, the pain was never so unbearable that I needed to slow down or stop at all. So that 5th week, that first workout I was doing in the week, the pain was there before, during, and then after the workout. And the moment I decided I needed to actually take a rest day was that night when I got in bed. There was no pressure on my knee, but there was still the same amount of pain that there was when I was running earlier in the day. And the pain was to the point where I could not sleep. And I knew that if I were to continue pushing, even though I was hitting my paces, I might cause an injury that's irreversible, or I may not be able to recover from it at all and have to basically not show up to the race because I was injured. And so the first thing I had to do once I decided to take a break was figure out what the heck was even wrong with my knee. And luckily, there's a ton of resources on Google. I figured it was runner's knee, and primarily because there's an article from Healthline that one states 80% of injuries for most runners are induced by repetitive stress. And if you look at my base training where there was a ton of inconsistency and I just did not hit good mileage to get my body ready for the marathon training, and then I went straight into high mileage, 60 to 70 mile per week, and adding 2,000 to 3,000, sometimes 3,500 feet of elevation gain, it was very obvious that I probably fell into that 80% of repetitive stress on my body just way too fast. I rapidly ramped up all my volume, and unfortunately my body paid the price for it in the form of runner's knee. So I ended up taking 6 days off from running, and on the 7th day, so that next Monday, I decided to run because I was feeling no pain at all when walking, standing, putting pressure. So I decided I would run extremely easy. If I felt anything at all, I would immediately stop the run and then just reassess the next day. So just continue to kind of go day by day at that point from taking that 6 days or that week off. And luckily, when I went out for the run, I went super easy, like a 9-minute mile pace or something. I went really slow and I only did, I believe, 4 to 6 miles. So I reduced the mileage and I went extremely easy on my pace and I felt no pain. So I decided what I would do is then moderate or adjust my plan to accommodate for the knee while trying to slowly ramp back up with the plan that I would run a shortened and moderated training plan to still run the marathon. So now that you understand how I got to the place of injuring my knee with runner's knee, and then what I did once I decided to stop and address the issue, let's talk about what I did during those weeks of rest and then what I continued to do through the rest of the training block up to the marathon and even till today. So one thing I immediately started doing when it came to the knee injury was icing and massaging every single day. Now, I'm not really sure how much icing and massaging helped with the overall recovery of the knee, but icing for sure helped with the overall pain that I was feeling in my knee. So I would ice 15 minutes, roughly 3 times in a 15-minute stretch. So 15 minutes ice, 15-minute off, 15-minute ice, 15-minute off, and then 15-minute ice. So I do those 3 15-minute increments, basically 2 to 3 times a day. So luckily I work an office job and I work from home, so it wasn't too difficult to just go grab an ice pack and basically wrap it on my knee and just sit at the computer and ice it. I'd set a timer on my phone and I would ice it for 15 minutes. So if you do not have that luxury, I would at least recommend icing your knee once in the morning if you can before you do whatever you're doing for your day, or at least at night when you've kind of settled down for the night. If you're watching TV or you're just laying in bed, at least try and ice your injury. So if it's not a knee and it's something else, try and ice your injury because that may help reduce the overall pain and inflammation that you're feeling with the injury. And then massaging was similar in the case that it helped relieve some of that pain. And so the last thing I'll talk about that I've been doing since the injury till today, and I will continue doing for the forever future, is strength training. Strength training is crucial to injury prevention, and unfortunately, it was something that I greatly neglected prior to the injury. One thing I will note about strength training is it's not something that I believe directly helped fix my runner's knee. So I'm hesitant to say that like, oh, strength training was a part of how I fixed my runner's knee. I really do believe it was just time off and being more strategic and not so stubborn about my mileage when I went back to my training plan, and really just listening to my body and being, like I said, not so stubborn and being a lot smarter to listen and slow down or take rest when needed to ensure that I stayed healthy. But strength training is a great part of preventative maintenance for injury and helping reduce the overall risk of injury. So I started implementing strength training the second week. So once I started running again, I started implementing really light strength training, and then I've slowly built that strength training up over time as I realized that my knee was no longer injured and I wasn't going to basically re-cause an injury by speeding or ramping things up too quickly. So I implemented strength training into my routine, and now it is a regular thing I do. I do lower body or leg strength training twice a week. I would do 3 if I wasn't running such high mileage, but because I'm running such high mileage, I don't wanna, again, overstress my body and cause another injury by just doing too much. Now, another thing to note with strength training and why I believe it's so crucial to injury prevention is a weak muscle group or weak component of your body can lead to an injury, even if it's a muscle group that has nothing to do with that injury. So for example, if I have weak hips or weak glutes, that may appear in the form of the runner's knee that I received. And I do know it may sound counterintuitive. You would think that a weak hamstring would lead to a hamstring issue, or a weak calf would lead to a calf issue. But unfortunately, that's usually not the way it works. A weak muscle group is usually compensated by some other part of your body. So back to that example of weak hips or weak glutes, your knee may be what takes the brunt of that load to compensate for that weak muscle group in your body, which ends up leading to the injury of that knee. So addressing your weak or underdeveloped muscle groups will help ensure that you reduce that risk of injury by not inducing extra load to other parts of your body. And I wish I could say that I did some crazy special knee focused regimen for my strength training, but my strength training is extremely basic. I primarily do squats, lunges, calf raises, and hip thrusters. Those hit the primary major muscle groups of the leg and ensure that my muscles stay strong and those muscle groups are really developed so that I hopefully don't, like I said, cause overcompensation in another area of my body, which leads to injury.